Now, for this part of the show, we would like to welcome in now reoccurring guest, Nick Pedone. You've seen him in a couple episodes. You've heard him in a couple previous episodes. Nick, welcome in to Cover Your Balls.
What's going on, Nick?
Hell yeah, guys. What's up? What's up? Last time we spoke, man, we were getting optimistic about the Browns. At least Jordan and I were, and it didn't end the way that we wanted it to. But hey, man, what a ride it was. And I know we're getting ready to talk about all of it that went into it. But just what a fantastic season. I'm excited to be on the podcast to talk about it with you guys again.
Happy to have you back, Nick. You bring a lot of valuable insight and solid opinions that people shouldn't disagree with, and if they do, then they need to check themselves. I don't know about how you feel about that, Jordan, but that's how I feel.
No, I agree. Before we get started, Nick, how long did it take you to rewatch that Browns game versus Kansas City?
I'm actually a little bit different. So like right as the clock hit 0-0-0, that was a loss for me. Like I thought I was going to be devastated. Like before the game, I was like, man, if they lose this, it's going to be so disappointing. Like it was a great season, but you also never want to waste an opportunity like that, to play in an AFC championship game. That's why you play an NFL season, is to get to that point. So I thought I was going to be devastated, but really when the clock hit 000, I didn't feel that disappointment really at all. If anything, like if the Browns were going to lose that game, I would have wanted it to be a loss exactly that way, on a 3rd and 15 draw to Chad Henne, because that just exposed everything that was wrong with this team throughout this whole entire season up until that point. And that's also not the kind of loss, because you were right there with the reigning Super Bowl champs, that stinks up the entire offseason like we've seen in the past. That's not one where you have to take your quarterback and rip him up and throw him away, fire the head coach, fire the GM. It's completely different. But on the inverse, it shows you, wow, like that's a massive glaring hole as to how Chad Henne took a football and ran it 14 yards on a down that was the only thing that couldn't have happened. So really, I turned around and I watched it pretty quickly, because I just wanted to make sure that my eyes were telling, what my eyes were telling me, what my brain had thought it interpreted in real time. And as it turns out, when I went back and rewatched it, I was right.
That was the best play in Michigan football history. It was the best play I've ever seen by an athlete.
That's the first time Michigan's beaten a team from Ohio in years.
I mean, how about like the prequel to that though, was Chad Henne put out like a 60-yard arm punt to Carl Joseph. Like if that wasn't the most Michigan to Ohio thing ever, I don't know what was.
Hey man, anything is possible.
It is.
Anything is possible, as we learned. And now Chad Henne is going to be playing in Super Bowl 55, or at least backing up Patrick Mahomes. And who knows, he might see the field. Maybe Andy Reid will, have another big set of balls and put him in there to run the football. But we'll have to wait and see what happens on Sunday, February 7th. And we'll be getting into that here shortly, previewing the Super Bowl with you, Nick. But let's talk about our Cleveland Browns. We've had some time to digest it, so let's talk about it now. We finish the Elite Eight, you would say, in the NFL, neck and neck with the defending Super Bowl champions, and we come up short. And there's a couple ways you could take this, but let's start in that game. Let's start in the first half with the penalty that was never called, the helmet-to-helmet from Daniel Sorensen on Rashard Higgins that caused the fumble out of bounds as Higgins tried to extend that ball over the goal line, resulting in a touchback. Nick, 1, what was your initial reaction when that happened? And 2, do you agree that either the touchback rule should be changed or that targeting should be reviewable in the NFL since it is in college?
Boy, I think I agree with both of those. Right when the play happened, it was like, damn, that is one of the worst rules in sports, and it just showed its very ugly face in one of the biggest games of the whole year that the sport has to offer. People were tuned in, even if you're not from Missouri, even if you're not from Ohio, to watch, some of the NFL's best talent on that game. And to see that rule happen, if I was just an average fan of the NFL, say like my girlfriend Cam, who got into football a little bit this year, but not entirely, she was like puzzled. why that would happen. And then like with the, after they show the targeting penalty in slow motion that wasn't called, she was like, well, how come like they could do that? But literally in the Ohio State game last week, players were getting thrown out for doing the exact same thing. I'm like, yeah, that's the difference. And it's nice to know that is like finally going by the wayside, that targeting is becoming a bigger issue. And I saw people arguing, during the Ohio State Clemson game, like, oh, that's the softest rule in football. It shouldn't be an automatic ejection. Listen, it should. You either know the rules or you don't. Like, and I place a little bit of blame on Rashard Higgins for that too. And Stefanski kind of threw him under the bus there, I say, a little bit post game, where you got to know to not dive with the nose of the football in that situation. We teach our players not to do that, because a fumble through the end zone is just so deadly to a drive. And boy, was it. So I think now that it happened in a postseason game, both an uncalled targeting that should have been reviewed and a fumble through the back of the end zone, that's something that the competition committee needs to look at, because the competition committee sits around and they argue, should the season be 16 games or 17 games every year, when the real issues of sky judge, changing really weird, like nuancy rules like this are what they should be talking about. And we've seen it in the past when something like this happens in a postseason game, a lot of the pass interference call that wasn't in that Saints game. When it happens in the playoffs, they take it much more seriously, because that's when the lights are the brightest and that's where everything is under a microscope.
There's a lot of money on these games too, guys. We got to remember that. In baseball, the tie goes to who? The runner. In basketball, if there's a jump ball, both parties have an equal job to go get the ball. Like, football's the only sport that has a rule like that, where the offense can be rolling, and all of a sudden, the offense isn't protected at all. You protect the quarterback, but you don't protect the team that has the ball. The rule doesn't make any sense. It defies logic. I don't understand it. But I said the same thing, Nick, when that happened, when he reached the ball out for the pylon. I'm like, and I don't know if Stefanski completely threw him under the bus, because he said, I'll never doubt Rashard Higgins' effort, and I appreciated that. I'm like, we all knew that he probably shouldn't have reached out. That's the opposite of what New England would do. Typically, whatever the opposite of what New England is going to do is probably not what you want to do. You want to do what they do. And it's as frustrating as it was. Like you said, at the end of the game, I wasn't as mad as I thought I would be. It was kind of reminiscent of when the Indians lost into the World Series to the Cubs. I was like, we never should have been here anyways. I'm just grateful that we're here. It was a fun ride. And that's kind of how I'm thinking of this, guys. It was just a fun ride. Hopefully we can run this back.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I know we're going to talk about, free agency and stuff in a moment. I think the key to that is really running back with a similar group. I mean, if you guys watch Building the Browns that aired yesterday, you see some of the guys that were almost like outlier, troublesome sort of guys. I think of like David Njoku was the big one that comes to mind, that was literally torn up after this loss. And obviously he was on a prove it year and a prove it situation. I think a guy like David Njoku is something that the Browns need to probably bring back, even if his trade value is a third or a fourth round pick. Is that worth losing the second tight end on your roster in an offense that is reliant on tight ends? Things like that are what is going to be weighed this offseason, and probably what is being weighed currently as we record this podcast, which gives me so much optimism, because the cohesion that they spoke ad nauseum about this offseason, and finding a good general manager and head coach situation and building the staff the right way, it's finally done correctly. And I don't think there's going to be any, headbutts that take place that really just derail this thing this offseason.
I really agree, because I think that we've noticed through one season how on the same page Barry and Stefanski are. I mean, Nick, you talk about watching Building the Browns, and you heard Andrew Barry say, we had plans in place for when something like this happened in regards to Stefanski getting COVID before the Steelers game. They had that planned out in April last year. Of every potential situation this team was going to be in, they had a contingency plan. And so I think that, and guys, let's be honest, this is the first time in a long time we're not looking for a head coach, and we're not looking for a quarterback or a GM, and we're not really looking forward to the draft. Like, when's the last time our first pick was below 20? And it wasn't because via trade. Like, I mean, this is the first time we have our own pick.
I had braces. That's all I know, is I had braces.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
It's been a real long time. But there's just so much we can talk about. And Nick, you made one comment about running it back with the same team. Yes, this team needs to make some additions, as we're going to get into here, but we need to run it back with the same team. So this is where I want to ask you the hot topic right now in Cleveland, Ohio, and the hot topic in football talk across the country. The quarterback by the name of Deshaun Watson, who is available in Houston.
Right.
A lot of Browns fans, we'll say it really is split. Browns fans want to trade Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson. Other ones are saying absolutely not. This is what I know. Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback than Baker Mayfield at this moment. Baker Mayfield also just finished as a top 3 quarterback in the NFL, ahead of Patrick Mahomes over the last 10 games of the regular season. In his first year under his third offensive scheme and third coach. So one, why is everybody so enamored with Deshaun Watson, who just won 4 games, who, let's keep in mind, played Kansas City and didn't score a single point 3 quarters after putting 24 on them, and is really becoming a crybaby in Houston because he's not getting his way. For a guy that is our vocal leader, our captain of the football team, and a guy that just lost that wants to come back and run it back.
Might be in the water.
Yeah. Listen, I think this all stems from the fact that if you're a team outside of the one that employs Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs, Deshaun Watson at this moment today, on February 1st, as we record this, Deshaun Watson probably would be an upgrade than what you have at the quarterback position talent-wise. I don't think anyone's disputing that, whether you're a Browns fan, whether you're a Bills fan, after the awesome season that Josh Allen had. Think of teams like the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, who had a promising rookie year, a little bit dip of a year this year, but ultimately on the right path. That's where a lot of that comes from. But when you think about the situation realistically for the Browns, you hear what Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, both of these two guys, always repeat the same adjectives whenever they talk about the football players that they're looking to acquire. And that's smart, tough, and accountable. And I think over the last 3 years, especially seeing Baker's bounce back season this year versus what happened in year 2 with Freddie, I don't see how Baker does not check all 3 of those smart, tough, and accountable boxes, because he completely owned up to the guy that he was last year and the interception problems that plagued the offense last season. Even if it wasn't his fault, even if it was Freddie Kitchens partially and partially him, and partially the weight situation that we've made so much of throughout the offseason, Baker owned up to all of that. He came back and really balled out. And I don't see why fans, because I definitely take the side of that we need to stick with Baker, right? Because if you're going to trade for Deshaun Watson, you're going to end up making the team worse. We saw what that ESPN article said. It would take 2 first-round picks this year and next year's first-round pick. Baker Mayfield, who was number 1 overall, Odell Beckham Jr., who you gave up number 17 overall for, plus a future third, plus Jabril Peppers, who was a first-round pick, and a future mid-round pick a couple years down the road. Your team gets much worse for doing that. Cohesion is the biggest thing. They cannot trade for Deshaun Watson.
So I have a question for both of you guys. Do you think Houston is a bottom 10 NFL franchise? From an organizational standpoint, do you think Houston is a bottom 10 franchise?
Yeah, at this point, they're the new Cleveland Browns, Jordan. All the nonsense that we did in the past, from a quarterback sitting in the green room at the NFL draft, texting the owner, let's wreck this league. And that's what propelled him to draft him, to, projecting pornography on the walls in Berea as a failed attempt at a motivation tactic. Everything that's going on in Houston to me screams old Cleveland Browns, besides the fact they're losing the second best quarterback in the National Football League. And right now he has all the leverage in the world. So yeah, I do believe that they're a bottom 10 franchise right now, because they hired David Culley as their coach. If they didn't hire David Culley as their coach, there was nobody else. He would be coaching the Baltimore Ravens wide receivers next year the same way that he did this year. There was no promotion in the pipeline for David Culley. Yes, they are, bottom 10 for sure, if not bottom 3.
Mitch, can you help me explain maybe then? Because I'm terribly confused on how. And this, I was on the side of Deshaun Watson, where he's Deshaun Watson. I mean, he's unbelievable, right? But how does a quarterback who's that good? I mean, I've never seen Aaron Rodgers win 4 games. Tom Brady won. Like,
No.
I've seen people with similar talent that he has on, or like, in I would say I think Houston's a more stable organization than some of the other organizations I have in the back of my mind. But I can't figure it out, guys. Is he really that good, or is this kind of like a mirage? Like, because I've never seen a quarterback win 4 games and be considered great in my life, ever.
Well, it's the defense, Jordan. It's the defense, if you ask people. It's the lack of weapons, Jordan, because, apparently. But wait, I thought great players make people better around them, right? Isn't that? I mean, LeBron James took one of the worst finals teams ever, the worst finals team ever, to the finals. Let's just be honest, though. LeBron's the greatest of all time, but Aaron Rodgers has made the most out of what he has, right? Deshaun Watson has thrown more touchdown passes to first-round picks in his career than Aaron Rodgers has. So you're right. How great is Deshaun Watson? He led the league in passing. Well, that's what happens when you're trailing in every game this year. Like, let's be honest. Before the last 2 seasons, I wouldn't have put Houston as a bottom 10 organization. And the only reason I'm putting them in the bottom 10 now is strictly because they let Bill O'Brien become the general manager and the head coach. That's the only reason they're there now. And before anybody else tries to come at this and say, Deshaun Watson had no help, they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. I've said it before, and I'll put it in context again. DeAndre Hopkins got traded to the Arizona Cardinals March 16th, 2020. Deshaun Watson signed his max extension September 4th/5th, whatever time frame you're in, 2020. So not only did he know DeAndre Hopkins was gone, they had all the wide receivers that were going to be playing this season for the Houston Texans already. Deshaun Watson knew what he was getting himself into. So that poses the question, did Deshaun Watson care about winning, or did Deshaun Watson care about his money? And if he cares about his money, that's fine. You can't attack another man for his money. That's his choice. But you don't get to go after your money and now bitch and complain because you don't get your way. That's just not the same. And that's why I have an issue with people wanting that man in Cleveland. He is not a leader. And it's shown this year. He's not a leader. And why would we ruin something we already had going for us? And why would we bring a pass-first quarterback to a run-first offense? That wouldn't even fit our scheme.
No.
And Nick, you touched on it. It would make the Browns worse if they went through that trade. And not only that, not only are we getting rid of draft capital, you're bringing on that massive contract that would then limit you in free agency to address the needs you need to address. It makes no sense. Too many Browns fans are playing fantasy football right now. This isn't fantasy football. Your team was one play away from making it to the AFC Championship game, and you don't want to run it back with the same team.
Do you guys know these fans? Because I, honest to God, haven't talked to one moron who thinks that we should make this happen. I haven't.
Oh, I know some people.
And I'm going to throw this to you, Nick, right now. But I don't want to bash on Deshaun Watson. I think he's a really good quarterback.
He's a very good quarterback.
I'm really confused because I've never seen anything like this where the pedestal we have him on is so much higher than his production. And it's really hard for me to sort it out. I've never had my opinion on on anything specific go back and forth like this seesaw where I'm in Deshaun Watson's corner 1 second and the next second I'm just like, I don't know how good this guy is. Baker Mayfield's trending up, and it's because of what he's doing in the locker room. Deshaun Watson, complete other way. He's trending downward. So I can't even imagine even thinking about that if I was Andrew Berry, and I'm sure he never did.
Yeah, no. Yeah. It's not worth it. And I mean, like, you could go ahead and do that, but why? Like, the quarterback that you have is finally the one that they believe that could lead them to the Super Bowl. I mean, they've said that on numerous occasions, not to mention something that gets lost in like the shuffle of all this is Baker is from Texas, originally. So, and the Houston Texans play, wait for it, in the AFC, in the AFC on our side of the thing. So if you are becoming as good as you think you will become with Deshaun Watson and intend on competing for an AFC title year in and year out, you don't think you're going to run into Baker Mayfield who's pissed off at you along the way? And that's just not something that I'd be willing to do at all from a general manager standpoint, on top of all the list of cons that we weighed out. I think something that also goes unnoticed, and we'll wrap this up if you guys want to, because it's pretty much pointless, and we've all pretty much said the same thing, that it's never going to happen, is we got to kind of stop acting like the whole no weapons thing is legit, is like factual, because Brandon Cooks is really good. Like Will Fuller is going to get paid this offseason. Brandon Cooks, there could be a team, hell, it could be the Browns, and we'll talk about that in a second, that put together a decent trade package to land Brandon Cooks in Cleveland, because those guys aren't bad football players. So the fact that the no help thing, sure, that defense was abysmal. Sure, they had Romeo Crennel, who just celebrated his 90th birthday on the sideline coaching them this season. But and that's all the things that led up to the frustration in Houston for Texans fans. But yeah, it's just not worth it.
Mitch, you have anything on the Browns? Can I ask this one last Browns question? You have something?
Go ahead and ask a question.
Okay, guys. So this is a question for both you guys, and then we can move on. The Browns have a lot of needs. What do you guys feel is the biggest need for the Browns this offseason that they should address either in free agency or in the draft?
Do you guys want me to go first?
Yeah.
Nick, go ahead.
All right, so here's the thing, and I've talked about this show on my show a little bit. I've touched on it. People think and people swear that linebacker is the biggest position of need, that's going a surefire 26 overall pick. If Zaven Collins out of Tulsa is there, if Nick Bolton, is sitting there, you got to draft him. I've already seen the mock drafts flying around Twitter with those guys' names being the ones that are off the board at 26. From the system that they're going to keep in place. And we could have the Joe Woods conversation. We could have it another day. As of next year, Joe Woods will be the defensive coordinator. It will still be the same exact scheme, which is something that we haven't seen since the defensive coordinating days of Ray Horton. Like, we have had no cohesion at all. We joke about head coaches. The bigger joke is defensive coordinators. We burn through defensive schemes in Cleveland every single year outside of the Greg Williams return. Anywho, I think cornerback will be the position that this defense addresses first and foremost. Rashard Higgins said on a Twitch stream where he was just answering fans of random Browns fans, his thoughts on the season. And he was saying, obviously, he was disappointed with how it ended. It was a great run. Somebody commented something along the lines of like, defense kind of let you guys down. And he said, yeah, we really could have used Greedy, but it's too bad that he still can't feel his arm, which is something that's worth noting and something that's alarming. And I also see people that are so quick on social media to like throw Greedy under the bus. Same with Denzel Ward, and like label these guys as soft. First of all, cornerback is the most damaged position in this sport. Like, there is no cornerbacks of the top tier of corners in the league besides those guys that play all 16 games. Like, it's just a position that you play, 12 or 13 games a season because they're slighter guys that are mostly speed stick guys. So for Greedy to be getting this slander, I don't think that's right, because he's a guy that had a label of he was afraid to tackle, and he was finally trying to learn how to tackle in training camp and ends up with nerve damage in his shoulder. And I'm no doctor. I know you guys are not either. From the limited research I've done, these type of nerves do not just miraculously grow back. So I think the bigger gaping hole outside of linebacker in a defensive scheme / thing that Joe Woods tries to do, where it's so defensive back focused, because remember, he was a defensive, back coordinator at San Francisco before he was hired with the Browns. I think they're going to look to pair another really good corner with Denzel Ward before they look to invest, whether it be significant money capital or significant draft capital in the linebacker position, because that's just the position that that analytically driven front offices just don't value that much. The Chiefs, outside of Tyrann Mathieu and Willie Gay, who didn't even play in the divisional game that the Browns played against the Chiefs, I can't really think of one of their linebackers. Like, no notable names come to mind, because it's just kind of a dying breed of a position in a league that's so dependent on wide receivers. You got to find another glue cornerback. And I know that might be an unpopular opinion, but I would not be shocked at all if the first pick, if the round 1 pick was not a linebacker. I can't stress that enough.
Mitch?
I think it goes without saying, the first pick for the Browns in the first round is going to be on the defensive side of the football. Now, for me personally, Nick, and listen, everybody has an opinion. That's why we bring you on the show, because we want to hear your opinion. For me, I would say linebacker, but I'd also I've started to look at the free agents out there. And, you have a Bud Dupree that's coming off an ACL injury that isn't going to get the money he probably wanted in Pittsburgh, that the Browns could double dip and not only sign a linebacker that's a rusher, but also take him away from your rival. So you're right, Nick. I think that the secondary we saw this year, not just with COVID, but with injuries, even Denzel missing 2-3 games of that calf injury that was just really mysterious all of a sudden after the Eagles game. We need depth in the secondary. And I agree. I think it could be a corner. I think it's one of three positions, though. It's a corner, it's an edge rusher, or it's a linebacker. And it's one of those three, and one of those three is only. I'll be shocked if it's a defensive tackle. I'll be shocked if it's a safety, because I think they're really banking on Grant Delpit coming back. So I'm going to say linebacker just because I love Collins, the dude from Tulsa. I've been watching a lot of his stuff. And I mean, he is a baller. His stats this year at Tulsa speak for himself. So he's what I want. But at the same time, I'm not going to get mad as long as we address a need. I'll be furious if we go out there and, we draft another tight end in the first round just for no reason. But I do agree. It's going to be defensive. And I'm looking at Collins, but I'm right there with you, Nick. I could totally see it being a defensive back.
Yeah, you guys named all three of the positions that we could probably get somebody from. I'm really curious on what we do with OBJ. Guys, I love a nice paint job, but I love making sure what's going on under the hood is what's supposed to be happening. I want to keep what we got. Ogunjobi's a free agent, and Olivier Vernon. Now, we may not keep Olivier Vernon, correct? But Ogunjobi, I'm hoping we were able to keep him. I want another edge rusher. I want to double down on what we're good at. We're great at. I don't want Stefanski to have to change the way he coach. Like, I love Coach Stefanski and his system and his game plan. I don't think there's room for OBJ, and that's okay. That's not OBJ's fault. It's not ours. I want to double down on what we're great at. I want to get another edge. I mean, J.J. Watt, he probably played his last game in Houston. Let's see if we can get somebody to pair on the other side of Myles Garrett.
Right.
You think about all the dominant teams in the playoffs, they're getting a pass rush, right? Outside of Kansas City, not getting a little bit, dominant. But I mean, I want to be dominant on the defensive side of the ball. I want to put all of our assets into that. So if we can somehow maneuver OBJ, and it's not because I don't want him here, it's because I don't think Stefanski can really. I want to see OBJ flourish, and if we're not going to use him, like I don't think we're going to use him, I don't want to keep him. And if we can get assets so that we continue to play in the playoffs and maybe in the Super Bowl this week, I'll do whatever it takes. We have enough weapons on offense to score points. It's not having OBJ in the final game is not the reason we lost. I would love to get rid of him and get some assets. That's my take on it, guys.
And Nick, before I let you go there to answer that or comment on that, Jordan, you said how J.J. Watt, probably played his last game. You notice how J.J. Watt hasn't, requested a trade? Just throwing that out there.
3 of the last 5 years, he has been on the IR, so that is very notable. I understand he's very injury prone.
I'm just saying Deshaun Watson requested a trade, but that just goes to tell you the type of man J.J. Watt is. He's not out there publicly requesting a trade.
Oh, for sure. Two completely different. I mean, Deshaun Watson's looked at as kind of like an NBA superstar. That's kind of how when we think of
Yep.
I mean, what did his former coach say? This guy's the closest thing to Michael Jordan, and he's acting like it right now. He's acting like a real prima donna.
For sure. Nick, out of the free agents the Browns have, and there's a lot of them this offseason, who are, your top 2 or 3 that you're looking for the Browns to potentially bring back? Or are they not going to bring many of them back? I mean, I'm looking at the list right now, and we touched on Olivier Vernon, Ogunjobi. I mean, Higgins is a free agent. You have B.J. Goodson, who was the captain of your defense this year. That's a free agent. Carl Joseph, who played some meaningful snaps. Terrence Mitchell. I mean, there is a lot of guys all throughout this team that are free agents.
And the one thing that comes down with all of them is money. This is not the same John Dorsey front office where because of a player's name they're going to overpay for them. So like I'll throw you an example of Olivier Vernon. Even though he's coming off of a ruptured Achilles, prior to that he was having an awesome season, especially in the absence of Myles Garrett with COVID-19, and then when he was dealing with some of the side effects, he's obviously gassed some of the games thereafter when he was cleared to come back into play. Olivier Vernon was doing tremendously well. But so if the money is right, I can see the Browns saying, hey, well, come back because you don't cost that much. And we're not going to be able to find someone that does what you're capable of doing for X amount of dollars. That's everything with this front office. And I hate to say this because it's not everything. Most of the moves that this front office will make are within a spreadsheet. And if the spreadsheet doesn't kaput out something that's green, and if it's yellow or if it's red, they're going to be much more skeptical to pull that off because everything needs to have logic. Everything needs to make sense. To Jordan's point with Odell Beckham Jr., if they do move on from him, which I don't think they're going to, I think they're going to return Odell this season to just try to make it fit. I wouldn't be surprised to see a wide receiver go at 26 overall in the first round, solely because this is a front office and this is an organizational ideal that is constantly, I don't want to say replacing, but adding more ammo into the arsenal than needed, so to speak. We saw that in the 6th round with Donovan Peoples-Jones, who played much more this season than we originally thought. He's a slot guy. There's your future Jarvis. When it's time for Jarvis to be done, whether it's, a contract casualty or whether it's, just on the play field, we could trade for more. They're constantly going to look to have the replacement in their own pipeline without paying much money for those replacement guys. They don't believe in paying for depth. I do think Larry Ogunjobi is gone. That's a hunch based off of his comments in the postseason presser where he said, he doesn't think much of that. He lets his agent kind of handle it. That's usually a kiss of death saying, goodbye. They have Andrew Billings in the pipe work there that sat out this year due to COVID precautions. I think there's your starting day one left tackle. Sheldon, interior tackle on the defensive line. Sheldon Richardson, that's a guy that's under contract that I'm not sure he's a surefire layup to return to the Browns in 2021. They're going to look to upgrade a lot defensively. I think Carl Joseph is probably back. I think Rashard Higgins is back. I think that's a move that has been in the works and noted and reported in the works for a long time. And the people that I have spoken to, I could feel confident in saying that Higgins does want to be back in Cleveland, even if it is on another discounted, deal. He loves working with Baker that much. So I think Carl Joseph, Rashard Higgins, those are my 2 slam dunks. And then maybe a hybrid. I would say one of the 2, if not both, of Malcolm Smith and BJ Goodson. The issue with those 2 guys is that the Browns need to be faster. The second fastest player on your defense can't be Myles Garrett. And that was the case this year. It was Denzel Ward was the fastest and Myles Garrett was the second fastest. Like that just can't be the case. And the biggest knock on both BJ Goodson and Malcolm Smith, more so Malcolm Smith solely based off of his age, is that they were so slow. That's why like Kevin Johnson, the nickel corner who played decently throughout this season, that was just a Band-Aid of a 1-year signing. He looked like his cleats were in molasses in that Kansas City game. He's not going to be back with the Browns in 2021, both offensively and defensively. That's what I like about the pairing really of Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods, is both of their schemes thrive on speed. So like the Browns in the 3rd round, dare I say in the 2nd round, are going to draft a super fast receiver. They're going to add a receiver this offseason that's going to have 4.3, 4.4 speed. And it's going to be really awesome to see. Same thing that the Chiefs do every year. They throw a dart at a Mecole Hardman, at a Robinson type of receiver, Byron Pringle every year that could just take the top off of an offense. And that's what I look for. I would say my 3 for sure: Rashard Higgins, Carl Joseph, and a hybrid of Malcolm Smith, BJ Goodson. Probably not both.
We could always re-sign Antonio Callaway. Isn't that why we brought him in initially, to take the top
He's
off
gone.
the defense? Oh, I know.
He's
I know
the
he
Chief
is.
now. Kansas City said we'll take another jab at another fast guy.
Foreskin City did.
He's not gonna last through dinner. He's not gonna last very long.
How about this, guys? I got a really funny tweet about I was like, I tweeted just like in a very open-ended, like, I wonder the role John Dorsey played in the massive trade that the Detroit Lions had just made for Matt Stafford, sending Matt Stafford away for 2 picks plus Jared Goff. And this reply from this guy who has like a bot handle said, John Dorsey nailed it, buddy boy. He was probably up monitoring player arrests to get some real football players and caught the Rams slipping. Like, could you just imagine John Dorsey like being up at night looking at criminal records and then the Rams call and he's like, yeah, let's just get this done.
I love John Dorsey.
I miss John Dorsey.
I
He was
do
a
too.
great
I like
player.
John Dorsey. I was a
great
fan.
player evaluator, not coach evaluator though. My God, might be one of the worst. But all right, boys, I have one question before we move this on to the Super Bowl, and we're going to keep it Browns. So Jordan and Nick. Jordan, I'll let you go first because I know Nick probably has, about 500 different options in his head right now. So the one player the Browns should or will acquire this offseason via free agent signing or trade.
Should? I'm going to stick with J.J. Watt. I like J.J. Watt a lot. I think it brings another veteran into the locker room, too, that is, he's going to keep people accountable. And it's somebody they're going to want to work with. I just think he would be good for the Browns culture. I love culture, guys. I think he would fit in well. And, when you have another man in the room that is going to look out for other teammates before himself, that's the guy I want. That's the type of leader I want.
For sure.
I mean, they did write a book about it. Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last. That's the type of guy J.J. Watt is. That's the type of guy I want on my team.
Yeah, I'll double down and say that I hope J.J. Watt is the guy, based off of the fact, if it's not the Browns, I would be very nervous. And I know people are, the cap space truthers will wag their fingers at me and say, oh, it's impossible. I'd be very nervous at the Pittsburgh Steelers. His brothers
I thought about that.
And if you're the Cleveland Browns at this current juncture, you're at the point as a franchise, and I pray to God that Andrew Berry and that Jimmy Haslam realize this and realize it enough to act upon it, that it's okay to spend some of that, cap space capital on playing defense, sort of speak. Like if it costs, a third, if the Pittsburgh Steelers are willing to give Houston a 3rd round pick for J.J. Watt, the Browns need to bite the bullet and step in front of that pitch and say, we'll give you a 2nd. That's the point that the Browns are at, where they cannot continue to let divisional rivals pimp them, for a lack of a better term, on some of these players like J.J. Watt. I really hope that if it's not the Browns, please don't let it be the Steelers, because the Browns definitely need to play some defense in that perspective. And the injury stuff, sure. The fact that he's been on the IR all those times. I was talking to my buddy about this. When I look at J.J. Watt, and if the Browns somehow do trade for him, Kevin Stefanski brings him in, the sit-down meeting needs to be, hey, JJ, give me 11 good games. 11. You could sit out your 5. You could go on the IR for your 5, because we got, Adrian Claiborne, Curtis Weaver, who is a mid-round pick of a rookie that tore his knee, that will be back this year, that the Browns scooped up off waivers. You'd always find good, pass rushers to fill in on a 5-game basis. That's usually my number. Porter Gustin would be really good in a 5-game spurt. JJ, give me 11 really good games and you could have your 5. Outside of him, though, there's going to be an issued situation that bears monitoring big time that happens in New Orleans, right? They're screwed over the cap. Like Pittsburgh, you could make the joke with Pittsburgh that, Big Ben is going to have to pay to play. It's going to be like youth sports where Big Ben is going to have to sign, he's going to have to pass his physical, and then he's going to have to pay his $25 entry fee that says that he's ready to go, and he's not going to make a dime. They're going to try to restructure Big Ben if he stays. In New Orleans, though, it's not that clear cut and dry. Defensively, the big name that Browns fans are going to try to look at is Marshawn Lattimore. He's from here, pairing those Buckeyes corners of Denzel,
Mhm.
because then Denzel Ward becomes your second best cornerback, and
Yeah.
Marshawn Lattimore first. And now you start to have a secondary that's formidable. Now you have some things that, Joe Woods could really work with and kind of do what he wants to do. But he's not the name that I'd be looking at if I were Browns fans. There's both of their linebackers, Alex Anzalone, Demario Davis, former Cleveland Brown, both of those guys make a decent chunk of change. Even if it's not the big money guy of Marshawn Lattimore, it's situations like that where teams screwed up and they can't get out of their own way. The Browns could now capitalize. So I would definitely monitor that Saints situation, even if it's not Marshawn Lattimore. And I'll throw a third wild card name out there of somebody, especially when we start talking about depth, that could be in the cards. And I did write about this on Fanside's Dog Pound Daily. You guys are going to call me crazy. Remember Handshake Gate? Remember when Baker against the 49ers didn't want to shake Richard Sherman's hand? Richard Sherman is a free agent, and he's at the stage of his career where he's going to be cashing in on those 1 year, $3 million deals all the way up until he decides to hang the cleats up. I'm not really a huge Richard Sherman fan, but as I was, writing this column, he is not a dummy by any sort of, any stretch of the imagination. Type of player that beats you with his mind. So if the Browns approach was to extend Denzel Ward on the cheap this offseason, which could be a move that is done, as well as bring back Greedy Williams if he can be brought back, or a young cornerback, or whatever you decide to do, I think having a guy in the room like Richard Sherman, in a very injured and damaged prone room, might I add, with the Browns secondary and how those guys are, of Richard Sherman that could kind of play at a very high level and teach these corners how to beat receivers with their minds. I think that's invaluable. And I think for a $3 million, $4 million contract, it'd be the smartest thing that the Browns could do, especially for a guy that played and that had success in the later years of his career with Joe Woods.
Hell, I'll give him $10 million if he's going to deflect a pass to send us to the Super Bowl like he did in Seattle.
And you never know.
And then have a great interview afterwards with Aaron Andrews.
I mean,
phenomenal interview.
As long as he doesn't go on TV and say that he's better than Skip Bayless at life again, I'm okay with having Richard Sherman on my team. I can never forget that interview. He told somebody that he's better at life than somebody. That's unbelievable.
That's such like a baller thing to say. Like I've never like it's almost narcissistic. Like imagine
100%.
like I'm just better at life than you. Like when you say life, that's like everything. Your career, your at home life, like your finances, like that's good. That's a good dig. If you're really mad at somebody, you just say that you're better than life at them. I've never heard that before, actually.
Oh, are you serious? Yeah, he says in my 25 years of living, I'm better at this than you. And then they argue about their careers. It's him. It's first take. I think from like 7 years. You have to go watch it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'll have to go back. That's good.
It's classic. It's classic. But guys, that is enough Browns for now. We're going to have plenty to talk about in this offseason because, we're not looking for a quarterback. We're not looking for a coach. It seems we have things in place. But the thing we don't have in place right now is playing for the Super Bowl this weekend. And let's touch on that quickly, guys. Patrick Mahomes, who is already getting, named the next GOAT, is playing the current GOAT in Tom Brady. Tampa Bay, Kansas City. Nick, just a little breakdown of this game, what you're excited for, and your pick.
Yeah, I am excited for the narratives that go into it. The future GOAT versus the current GOAT, this, that, and the other. I do think this is the best matchup. I definitely would have worried as to what would have happened to Mike Pettine's fraudulent Swiss cheese defense that he was running in Green Bay against Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, Eric Bieniemy and Andy Reid are like all time in their bags. Like Patrick Mahomes still isn't, even through the AFC Championship game, playing his best football. I think that toe turf has better of him than what he's willing to say publicly. Boy, I think it's going to be a really good Super Bowl and definitely a memorable one. I haven't even come close to thinking of a pick, but if I had to make one right now, I don't think I'm ready to bet against Tom Brady, even this late in the season. That defense, like, we could talk about Brady all we want. And is he overrated? Is he still elite? Yes, he threw those touchdowns, the amazing one to Scotty Miller at the end of the half, but he also did have those 3 interceptions. But that defense, man, you talk about drafting linebackers or signing linebackers in free agency. If you're the Browns, look exactly at what Tampa Bay did. If that's the position that you want to focus on, Levante David, who is a free agent, by the way, that guy is up there in age, but he has speed to burn. Like Devin White could be the best defensive player in all of football that nobody's talking about this season. Pro Bowl snub. I don't know how. I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow pulled out Super Bowl MVP if Brady doesn't have a fan.
He didn't make the Pro Bowl?
No, I'm pretty sure he got snubbed. I'm pretty sure Devin White got snubbed because there was a Brady quote somewhere along the lines of like we're playing for bigger bowls like than the Pro Bowl. So keep your head up, like that's meaningless type deal. But that defense is scary. If they could get Antoine Winfield back at free safety, that'd be an awesome, enormous help for them. But man, it sounds so illogical to pick against the Chiefs because they only have 2 losses on the whole season. Brady's season has been up and down, but it's the Super Bowl. The guy has been there 9 times. He's done this week 9 times. You know, I've covered this week before when in Super Bowl 53 when Tom Brady was there, and just the media fanfare, the fanfare, just the Super Bowl craze that goes into this week is completely different than even just a regular NFL playoff game. So the fact that he's done this 9 times and that Gronk is by his side and that they could offer that invaluable advice to these guys that are going to be playing in the game for the first time, I got to pick Tampa Bay, man. The more that I'm talking about it, the more that's making sense in my mind. Give me the Bucs.
Mitch?
I think you and I are gonna save our picks for our final show leading up to the Super Bowl. I think that's only fair. Can't be spoiling it. But man, Nick made a lot of good points there. It's got me thinking now about who I'm gonna take.
Right now I'm on Tampa Bay. That's where I'm at. We'll figure out. I will say just before we started taping, COVID has hit the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
And they do have a starting. They have O lineman now. He's a starting O lineman. I can't think of his name, but that's something to look at. You got to remember, Patrick Mahomes is dealing with some big toe issues. So how's his mobility in this game, especially now losing somebody on the offensive line?
Their starting center.
The starting center. That's a huge deal.
Daniel Kilgore.
That's a huge deal. So we'll see. I'm with Tampa right now just because I feel like it's kind of like that when Ray Lewis won his last Super Bowl with the Ravens. I don't know. I have this just weird feeling that Tom Brady's just not going to lose this game. I've watched Tom Brady win 6 Super Bowls. I've watched them all. I can't pick against. I don't know how I can't pick against them, but Tampa Bay's my team right now. You made a lot of good points, Nick. You're almost making me like seal it, but I can't.
I was leaning Kansas City, but now he's got me back on track thinking it's Tampa, strictly because I was leaning Kansas City because Patrick Mahomes is now 26-1 in his last 27 games started, which is a very impressive stat in and of itself. But we still got some days to go before the Super Bowl and time for me to make a pick and make a bold prediction. And our listeners and viewers will have to stay tuned for that from Jordan and myself. But Nick, thank you for joining us for this, special episode in light of the Super Bowl happening this week. Thank you for your insight on the Browns and wrapping up that season. And I know for a fact, come March or April, when we talk NFL draft, we will going to have you back on this show if you do accept, of course. But Jordan, do you have anything left for Nick?
No, thanks for coming on. The insight that you give us every time you come on is stuff that hardly anybody else can go to one place on the internet and find, and you just gave it all to us in just one sitting. It's hard to do, and you did it, so we appreciate you, as always.
Yeah, thank you guys. Absolutely. It's a joy coming on. I know Mitch touched on it. Draft season is the biggest season in this town, and it's going to be weird not drafting all the way till 26, but the draft is going to be right in our backyard, boys. The draft is going to be in Cleveland, Ohio. fans need to get excited, for this pick, because it's going to be a memorable one with the player being selected, being in Cleveland. Boy, we got to get these, Pfizer shots dipping or whatever the hell it's going to take, because I want that mall district area to be packed for the NFL draft in April.
I agree. I'm right there with you. Nick Pedone, ladies and gentlemen. Nick, thank you once again, and we will be talking to you very soon, sir.
Thanks, Nick.
Absolutely, guys.